Welcome back. This is the Keypoints. We're live on TV3, also live on 3FM 92.7, online at 3news.com, also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. So this week, Media General organized a public forum looking at the Fix the Country demand made by the Fix the Country movement. And essentially the question posed was, whose duty is it to fix the country and how? It was quite an interesting forum, and we are privileged to have with us in the studio this morning two speakers at the said forum. From my extreme left, we have Mame Awenado Kanyurige. She is a consultant with Black Bridge Consulting. Next is Emily Kanyuri Noor. She is the acting executive director of One Ghana Movement. Good morning, ladies. It's great to have you. I'm so excited when I have ladies because it hardly happens.
Right.
So it's good to have you. Before we launch into the conversation, though, we'll take some highlights from the public forum that was organized by your student Media General. But let me also add that we'll be joined via Zoom by one of the conveners of the Fix the Country movement. So when she does so, we'll do the needful and introduce her accordingly. But before that, let's take a sneak peek into some highlights from the public forum.
In answering the question fixing the country, whose job and how, the former UN Senior Governance Advisor Professor Bafo Ajimandria said the problems of the country began long ago and cannot be restricted to the current leadership.
Economy that's upended by unimpeded corruption, an economy that's incapable of providing the needed development infrastructure, economy that is making young people lose hope in the future of their country. I wish to emphasize that the situation we face today wasn't created today. It's not the creation of President Akufo-Addo and his government. It began long ago and has encompassed all the leaderships and governments of this country that we have had.
He stressed nothing will change if radical measures are not taken to address the fundamental challenge of the country's dependent economy.
This uninspiring situation will continue until radical measures are taken to address the fundamental challenge of our dependent economy. Adding to and complicating the challenge of the economy is the Ghanaian attitude or behavior that increasingly appear to be devoid of any treasured values.
For his part, investigative journalist Manasseh Azuri said in fixing the country, government has the most crucial role. According to him, though citizens have roles to play, efforts of government should put citizens on check.
It is the duty of the government of Ghana, headed by the President of the Republic of Ghana, and currently that responsibility falls on one person, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, who in 2016 came begging us to give him the opportunity to fix it. I was here, I was a journalist, and we covered it. I remember I even wrote an article saying, tell us what you have to do and stop begging. The next time I saw his statement saying that he would continue to beg because power belongs to Ghanaians. And that begging for power was not to tell us when to sleep or what to eat, but how to fix the country.
He cited his investigative piece, Robbing the Assembly, as a typical example of the neglect by government to do due diligence in dealing with corruption in the country.
I had gone around the country, 53 municipal, metropolitan and district assemblies in the country, in all the 10 regions at the time, and gathered evidence. The police CID also traveled across the country and gathered evidence. Everybody in the chain has done his or her part, but we are left with the Attorney General and the Minister of Justice to also act because they have the power to prosecute corruption cases.
Right, so you heard from two other speakers at the forum, Professor Bafo Ajimandria there, and also Manasseh Azuri, speaking on various issues highlighted for the public forum. In here, we have Emily and Mami, and we shall dig right into the issues here. Let me start with you, Mami. This movement started not too long ago, a couple of I feel like weeks back, and it seems to have gained traction, and it's keeping that momentum,
Right.
even though there's been some obstacles here and there. But we'll be looking at that also later on in the show. But how would you assess the campaign so far, from when it started to current date?
So I think in the beginning it picked up really quick because they were pretty much summarizing what everybody was feeling in one hashtag. But one of the interesting things also with hashtags and movements is that if you want momentum to be sustained, people need to be informed. And you're also dealing with a bunch of different ideologies on the platform or on social media or even in the community. We have people who are very political, who are very religious. And so the whole thing is that in the beginning it was all let's fix this thing. We are capturing what everybody's feeling. But how do you maintain it? Especially in Ghana where we can pick up, we get very excited quickly and then things die off. But I think with sustenance, right now, I think there's a lot of back and forth online because people are now beginning to wonder, okay, because whether they say it's smear campaign or not, some people are saying, hey, it's politically driven. And so that's one of the key things I think that even Professor Ajamandia was trying to highlight, that we need to also understand as a systemic issue and not necessarily just this government. Because if it was another party in power, you'll be facing the same problems. Right. And so being able to highlight those things, that it's a systemic thing and we need to fix it, it's easier not to lose people in the journey of trying to fix Ghana because it's a collective effort. And
right. And I think recognizing that, like you said, it's a systemic thing would help, rally everybody around.
Absolutely.
Because then it takes away the fact that, the government may think that it's being targeted and all of that. You don't necessarily want that. Emily, your thoughts on the movement so far?
I share in Mami's thoughts in that it did rally quite quickly, especially on social media, with the hashtag, people talking or speaking to the issues that were being raised, of course. But the back and forth with the powers that be, with the activities that the movement wants to embark on, is what has caused a bit of questions here and there as to what exactly is the problem. Because like we all rightly know and are saying, it is a systemic problem. Nobody is directly targeting the government of the day. However, it's the government of the day that is in charge currently. Exactly. So whatever comes up will definitely rub off of them. And so it's probably why there's a bit of pushback, But if the people are speaking, the belief is that you listen to them and then let's see what roadmap we can align on or go on. That is my thought on this.
Right. And Mame, at the forum, I think you made one statement which obviously became one of the headlines, that addressing the challenges facing the country will not take one day to do so, which is quite an important point to make. Right. But in acknowledging that, it also brings to the fore that perhaps there's been a certain, if you like, inertia which has led to this, current situation, which is perhaps now some people say, well, we've come to a head, and this is where we are now trying to figure things out, and it would look like then we're blaming the government of the day, but really that isn't what it is. So expand further on that statement you made, that, fixing the country will not take it wouldn't just be something momentarily, it would, take actually some time.
Oh, yes. Practically speaking, people also have to look at Ghana's history, looking at the structural adjustment program, so what people call the Washington Consensus, that were first initiated in the early 1970s, and that was to help give African states or developing countries loans. And because we had gotten independence, but we didn't have money. We had natural resources, but the developed world had physical they had money.
Liquid.
Exactly, liquid, exactly. And so there were all of these loans that were being given. And then, the banks came up with the idea of how to pay back the monies and the whole thing with the IMF, World Bank. But we need to also understand that our systems were structured in a certain way. I have to, it's a whole having to break down all of that. But our system was built on collecting on loans and debt. Now, anything that is built on that is problematic. You cannot sustain.
Right.
Because then you're not producing anything. Everything is based on taking from collecting loans or being in debt, right? It's going to catch up on you eventually. Now, why I'm saying it's not an immediate thing is because, unfortunately, our multi-party system also hasn't supported economic development. Because if you look at, for example, places like India, they have something called the 5-year plan. It doesn't matter who comes into power. If the plans are not completed, you cannot change them. So your political system also comes into play in having to solve these problems. And then COVID happened. And COVID came to expose a fragile system that we're getting away with loans and everything. It came to expose what was already there. And now people are seeing it and they are thinking it's not a today thing. It's been decades. So if you're going to fix something that has been happening for years, prior to even some of people being born who are even crying for Fix Ghana, it's going to take a lot of hard work. And just a quick thing to say, I was sharing this earlier. The US, the industrial program for change started in 1810. As early as that, China began in 1911. They got it right in 1978. So now, but they didn't have technology then. If we can help fix this thing for the next generation, this generation now has to be willing to make a lot of sacrifices. And when I say sacrifices, we have to realize where we are now. We are not where America is, even if you wanted to be there. So knowing that we are not there and where we are starting from, being real with where we are, to put in the work, the sacrifice that's going to take so that our children will tell a different story. Any generation that's unwilling to make sacrifices cannot get it right. So to fix Ghana, it's going to take a lot of work, personal discipline from us to plant some trees that we may never even sit under its shade, you know, but our kids.
Planting for the next generation.
Absolutely. And that is where our mindset should be in understanding this movement. That is not for us to enjoy.
Right.
The movement is that the next generation.
Sure. Now, let me probe a bit further before
Yes.
I come to Emily. When you say this generation would have to make some sacrifices, what are these? Just, you know, on the top
Okay.
of your head, what do you think these sacrifices would be? And do you think this generation is ready to make those sacrifices?
Boy, so two things. People don't understand. You see, when people hear the rise of China, they think it's like, oh, China rose, right?
It just happened.
But even within the communist system, when they were trying to build the economy, one of the key things that they would do is that they would develop one region by a time. So they would say, we are doing this place now. And their borders were really like locked. So they didn't have foreign investors coming in with all these companies. So the competition wasn't as keen as we are facing it now. So in Ghana now, if you think about it, there's a lot of foreign investment. So a lot of companies here making money. So then the local companies are not doing well, right? Okay, so now what's the sacrifice I'm going to have to make? I'm going to have to understand that people buy Chinese things because Chinese buy their own stuff, right? If so, we need to support our local businesses and we need to change our appetite for the things that we like, our taste buds, right? So reprogramming of the mind. So the sacrifice is the realization that there's delayed gratification in the journey. And I shared it, somebody thought I was lying, but I literally did work at a point I was earning 600 CDs. But that was my understanding of the fact that I knew that that's the journey and the price I have to pay for the path I want to be on. So the sacrifices are the fact that we need to really be able to support our local businesses, and the sense of entitlement. No one owes you anything. So life will only give what you're going to fight for. So there's a fighting we have to do because our predecessors were not able to fight that fight.
Right.
So we're going to fight their fight plus our fight. It's globalization now, right? There's competition. You see social media. What you're seeing online is a reflection of people's predecessors who have paid decades. America was not built in a day.
Definitely.
So if they are living a certain way, it's because of
The work towards that.
so this thing of flashy life and people are like misplaced priorities.
Now,
right?
in there, I'm getting the sense of something that has to do with the attitudinal change. And interestingly, that was the counter hashtag, one of the many counter hashtags that came out, allegedly sponsored by government.
Right.
They've come out to deny that. But at least we do know that it was, I mean, it did happen.
Right.
The counter hashtag. Emily, what did you make of that counter hashtag? Whether or not it came from government, what do you make of it? Because listening to Mame, there seems to be some truth in there that, well, perhaps things would have to change. And if it's changing, it's not just changing within the, if you like, the governance setup, but also within ourselves. She mentioned the sense or culture of feeling entitled. We will delve into that some more because I think that is at the root of all the challenges we have. So let's speak to the counter hashtag, which is fix your attitude.
I think it was fix yourself.
Fix yourself. I mean, there are many of them,
Yes.
really.
Well, there is some truth to it. We do need to fix some aspects of ourselves, definitely. The government will not be able to work on this alone. The citizenry has to rise up and be responsible for various actions that we take. However, it's the timing. You have to feel the pulse of the people because it was sort of an uprising. People were tired. People are fed up. People want things to change, you know. And so if they're asking that the country be fixed, which is actually on the back of promises made by the party of the day or the leadership of the day. So if you've told us that we are capable of fixing issues, and then we say, okay, we've
And
given
fix it.
you enough time, or that's what we believe, that enough time has elapsed. So how are you fixing this, or fix these aspects? Because initially there were specific things that were being spoken about: our healthcare system, our education system, our road network infrastructure. All these things were being spoken about, and then you tell the people to fix themselves. At that point in time, that's not
like-
what they want to hear.
Yeah.
They want to hear that, okay, these are the things that we are working on to ensure that the system we said we will fix is being fixed.
Right.
So yes, as you asked, we do have some work to do on ourselves. There is that sense of entitlement. We always talk about the Ghanaian Customer Relations Service, which is pretty
Yeah, I
much in
think you're right
shambles.
about that.
Pretty much in shambles. So if we look at all these aspects, there are things that we need to work on as Ghanaians. However, the onus at this point lies on the
Government of the day.
the government of the day, or the leadership, to take up the mantle and say, okay, this is what we are doing. This is our roadmap. This is our development plan, for which we believe maybe after 4 years we would have fixed, or we would be on the path to fixing ABC.
Sure.
And that would engender some confidence among the populace.
Right. Now, you talked about the fact that, yes, these demands that were being made by, you know, the youth online, the Fix the Country movement and everything, were basically not plucked, if you like, they were not coming from within a vacuum. They were actually based on what the NPP, when it was in opposition and when it was campaigning, had said, that we're going to do this, we'll do that, we'll fix the unemployment situation and everything. So it's pretty much like an accountability time. Well, you said you're going to do this, and we're making these demands. But if we stretch it a bit further too, the people who say that, well, because over the years, you've had governments in, governments out, and these governments come in and literally would want to dole out goodies to people. So that has engendered that attitude or culture of feeling a certain sense of entitlement. Do you think our politics and how it's done has some blame to take when it comes to this growing sense of entitlement culture in us? Is it something that perhaps it has come about because of the promises political parties make during electioneering periods and all of that?
I would say to an extent, yes. Because during the electioneering period, when promises are being made, manifestos are read, we hear of these specific promises that are made. And even if a party has been in power for a while, what happens is they talk about things that they have done. As to whether that's the situation on the ground or not, these are the expectations of the people, and they say, okay, we actually did X, Y, Z. So the people feel like, okay, if you're saying you're doing it, we should feel it. It should be something that we live on a daily basis. So the promises of the party of the day, or whether they were in position, that's what people actually use as a target or a mark to say, well, you said you were going to do this. Why are you not doing it? Mame rightly mentioned earlier that it is systemic. It's not going to happen overnight. Things that have been rotten have gone on for so long. And it will not take today, tomorrow. It will take a lifetime of some of us to see that there is an actual change happening. But if you come and you tell us that in 4 years, I'm going to do this and it will work out, you know, we have some people who are not also very realistic in their thoughts. They actually believe it, that, oh, the government says they're going to do it. And that's what...
Or that the government also makes unrealistic.
Exactly. So the government, and the people believe that
objectives
the government says they are going to do this, and I believe it. So they are helping the government campaign. Do you get it? So they are talking to other young people that the government says they're going to do it, and they'll do it. Now they are not doing it, and then they also feel the heat because they helped campaign. So what's going on? Kindly help fix it. No.
Right. Now, Mame, still on the sense of entitlement bit, has our politics has anything to do with that?
Let me tell you, an aspect. But you know, I'm gonna get in trouble for this. I always say this all the time. But religion, and because I'm not Muslim, I'll speak for the Christian element because I've been to church and I see there's this notion that sometimes we give in church of, oh, your helper, you'll be there, someone will come and drop this amount of money for you or this car. Life doesn't work like that. And sometimes, you see, you're creating this narrative that life, sometimes it happens. And if you're an exception to the rule, thank God. But even, so we'll talk about capitalism and socialism, right? And if you, and I'm not in church, but I want to give you a little scenario. Even the concept of the sowing, the man who gave talents.
Talents, yes.
Typical example of the reality that there's an expectation for you to work out something in your hands. So because a lot of people spend time in church, I really feel like we need to even do some data to look at how much time we spend in church and see what people are being taught. Because you see, people downplay religion. They say religion is the opium of the masses.
True.
It controls the way people think. So if you realize, even I was looking at a lot of the businesses that spring up in Ghana. So you pay attention to the Spintex Road, the people who run businesses there. Even right now in Ghana, it's the Lebanese, the Indians, the Turkish, a bunch the Koreans, the Chinese, of course. You have the Europeans here. And why is that? You pay attention to the element of even when you employ your own people and how they behave. And they start calling God, but they're stealing your money, right? And so we have to realize that religion plays a key role even in our politics and in the way we do things in Ghana. You want to address something, start even with the church. Because that's what Kagame did. He began to regulate how many churches were in the country. People want to go to Rwanda and understudy the system. Well, guess what? You need to understudy what controls the people. And the reality is, yes, life can sometimes give you certain things, but you have to work out something. China didn't get there because they sat there and said, oh, someone come and give it to us. We've come from colonization, neo-colonization. You can't sit back and expect that things will happen just like that. Sure. The hard work, the honesty. When the people work in foreign companies, how they behave is very different when they work for Ghanaians. You see, and then it's like you lie or you steal. I mean, someone have a small business and then you're stealing the person's stuff. Or they'll run a parallel business within your business, and then they'll go on to church on Sunday and give an offering. And you say it's a witch. I'm telling you that people downplay, but it's playing a key role in our attitude in this country. And so I'm beginning to realize that to address it, the church in this movement.
But that's the irony of it.
Right.
Like you said, the church has such a significant role.
Absolutely.
That if it were to be playing that role, perhaps things would change. But here's the case that culture of wait and wait for manna and that kind of thing is really coming from the church. So we find ourselves in a quagmire, don't you think so? I mean, because we're expecting the church to lead.
Yes.
In changing attitudes, but I mean, continually, what you hear the church preach about is quote unquote prosperity, and something will come through for you. So wait and see, that kind of thing.
The breakthrough,
exactly.
And prosperity is not bad, but you have to work it out. That is the whole idea of work. He said, "He who doesn't work must not eat." Even so, the idea is that it's okay if you want to preach prosperity, that's fine, but teach the people how to work, how to take care of their trash. To tell the truth. I keep trash in my bag, right? And I know that, yes, the government must provide the bins. There has to be recycling plants, right? But the people in government, they were once citizens like us. And
they're still citizens.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Exactly. And they get into this. Thank you.
Exactly. And they have that mindset with which they came from the people to the leadership. Exactly. So what's going to change really?
Exactly. Yes. So clearly that attitudinal change is needed.
Absolutely.
Right.
Definitely. It's just the timing of that counter hashtag, which is just not good.
Well, it was shade,
shade.
Throwing shade and all of that. That definitely wasn't good.
Right.
So having dealt with that, let's move on to look at specific issues. Now, a number of issues came up. Youth unemployment, obviously corruption was top on the list, security issues, health, education. Emily, if we were to look at the myriad of issues we had, and somebody were to ask you, so which of these do you think we should fix first? What would you say?
This would be a very tough one to say which one to fix first. Because let's just take all the ones that you've mentioned. All these things help
I didn't
with
even throw in roads yet. Let me throw that in.
all of them help with the quality of life. So we're looking at our healthcare system. In the past few months, we've heard of how people have died, young people, old people, because of lapses in the healthcare system. And people will tell you it's not that our healthcare professionals are not doing their jobs. They are doing so much with very little resources. They are breaking their backs on a daily basis with very little resources. That's not to say we do not have bad professionals.
Sure.
However, if your system is fixed, this is something I always say. If our systems are in place, there is no way anyone can circumvent it. We have the same medical or healthcare personnel who are probably not doing a great job here. They will leave the shores of Ghana, go to another country where the systems are actually working, and they'll fall in line.
Sure.
Why? Because the systems are working, and you are going to be held accountable. That's one thing we do not do in Ghana. We do not hold anyone accountable for anything. So someone has embezzled funds. Sometimes the religion aspect comes into it. It's all Fama Nyame attitude. Either that or we start with so much excitement and then it just dies down, it fizzles out at a point. So we talk about healthcare. Look at education. In 2021, we still have schools under trees. And these pupils, students have to compete with their counterparts in big cities like Accra. I mean, in recent times, parents have spoken about how their wards in maybe class 1 would come home with homework that they can't even understand, and that's students in Accra. But you go to a remote area and they don't even have a computer lab. There was one picture I saw. The teacher had arranged stones to, I think, symbolize depict the keypad. And this is a teacher trying to do their best. So can you imagine teachers being sent to those remote areas? That's the first thing. They are even going to refuse. Yes, Mami rightly said, we need to be able to sacrifice. But the systems also have to work for us. If the systems are not working for us, how are we going to say, okay, I'm trying my best and there's results being yielded from what I'm doing? So we look at healthcare, we look at education, security. In the past week, just last week, I heard of a guy who was gunned down at Pig Farm Total. He was working. He had left a forest bureau. He was going to hand over cash to a client. And of course, I'm sure leaving a forest bureau with a backpack would show that. Yeah. Exactly. So he was attacked. He was shot down. And this is someone just going about his daily life. We can sit and talk about how our security systems work, how it can be, it can rival all the good security systems across the globe. However, what is the situation on the ground? How are the people feeling it? So these are things we need to look at. And unfortunately, I can't pinpoint and say this sector should be
fixed first.
Maybe what we need to do is fix them in stages, each sector in stages. I used the road, Accra-Kumasi Road, just last month, traveling up north. This is the Accra-Kumasi Highway, one of the major highways in the country. And it's terrible. I'm sure we all know the situation. It's terrible. So if someone is running their business, this is a Ghanaian, an honest Ghanaian trying to make a living. Maybe they have a factory in Kumasi or even up country. Right. They are trying to bring goods, move things up and down. What is the actual situation on the ground for them? Everything seems to be stifling the efforts of the people. So if we are able to work on our various systems in stages, I think this would be able to help all of us in the long run.
Right. Now, Mami, do you think it's an issue about prioritization and perhaps we as a country have perhaps been not paying attention to the sectors that really, need to be attended to, talk about health.
Right.
Why is it that in this present day, you have what we've come to call a no-bed syndrome?
Yeah.
That's just unbelievable. And people actually die
Right.
because there are no beds to, have them, put on, and then some first aid administered and all of those kinds of things. So the very basic or fundamental things are lacking. And you
Right.
ask yourself, why is that? Because you look around and you think that, well, we could be in a much better position. So, and yes, we agree that it's a systemic thing.
Right.
But why is it that it's been able to, we've sustained the negative
Right.
for the longest time.
Right.
We're not able to sustain the positives. It's amazing.
The maintenance, yeah. You see it also with the buildings, right? You put up a building and then you cannot. So the idea of, one of the things I want to talk about healthcare, I'll say this. You know where the best doctors are in the world? Cuba. And they export medical experts, right? None of them even come here. They do things for free. Now, one thing is that Cuba is not even the economy, because it's not even as good as ours, right? Yes, and but there is a sense of duty or commitment to the people, the socialist thing that came through Fidel Castro. That's how I was explaining that the Ghana, to fix the problem, it has to be so strategic. It's one problem at a time, right? But everybody is doing their part in their small way. My area of expertise is trade, international trade. Now there's AFCFTA trying to promote intra-African trade so that we can move away from this whole collecting loans and all of that, right? Maybe I cannot do anything in the health sector, but I know, so the law firm that operates also with our consulting firm, our CEO, for example, he does stuff with Kolebu all the time. And he's brought an awareness to a hospital, trying to get things for the kids and stuff. And so if we just all played our part, trust me, there's enough here with us to even start doing the work in our own small way, and even if it's volunteer. You look at how people in the West will just pack their bag and go to Kenya and go teach in a remote place. Maybe everybody will say, maybe every weekend I'll volunteer at one place. Because that's one of the things I want to say about the movement. If people want to sustain the fixed Ghana movement, there has to be strategies in place. I was in UCT, University of Cape Town, when they came up with the whole roads must fall situation. And then roads must fall led to fees must fall, which helped bring reform to the fee system to allow a lot of black students to be able to pay their fees. But when you went to the people who were leading the movement, they put down demands and ways they thought the school could actually meet those demands. So there has to be strategy in the thing, and realization that there are short-term goals and long-term goals. And also knowing that if you ask, just for the even sake of your question, what could we do in the immediate to deal with something that can come up 20 years from now? Deal with education.
Education.
Yes, education, because when you start there, so the security and everything, yes, we have to obviously deal with those things. But let's say you want to look at something that's if you want to sustain something, start with the educational system.
I'm sure the government will quickly point you to free SHS then. Speak to that.
Actually, I had my own reservation about it, and one of the things I said was, it's a good policy. I think it's amazing. But one of the things is that, are we there yet? And so I was saying that, why didn't we just make it merit-based? The people who could pay. That's the way we also, those who can afford, also show their commitment to making Ghana better. We're not in the position. Obviously, because you have promised, we have to meet it, but it wasn't realistic. Some people could afford it, so make it merit-based, right? Those who couldn't, and use the rest of the money for infrastructure, facilities in the schools. So one of the key things I really would say is that even the new educational system, kids are going to write entrance exam, some entrance, something, and you see, these are all aesthetics to make it look very, for lack of a better word, bougie, right? Looking very flamboyant educational system. That's not the thing. And the last quick thing I'll say is that when the COVID hit and the kids couldn't write the WASI, I was saying in my head that this is the best time to say, scrap off this exam. Take the final year students, give them training, look at everybody's area of skill, and then give them some intensive training, even if they don't even go through the normal university system. Because now where we are moving towards, we need manufacturing, look at the vaccine situation. African countries are suffering and they are begging for, they scrap off these patents so we can manufacture medicines. So all I'm saying is that, we want to deal with the problem, one problem at a time, but one key thing is looking at the long-term, short-term, and the movement to be sustained, there has to be strategy and thought-out strategy to take Ghana to the next level.
Sure. Now, just one more thing from what you said.
Right.
So I get the sense that you're saying that we tend to pay more attention to the form rather than the substance.
Absolutely. And there's a big PR that is happening now. where it's like, even with the, so like, because I did trade, even the AFCFTA, we opened the office and stuff, right? And we're supposed to be trading. It's not like you call, you can't even get anybody. So there's this whole PR, but there's no infrastructure to back it. So it's out there, oh, we have this. Let's say, for example, Ghana, we're on the Security Council. Anybody who understands the Security Council system understands, it is not, no offense, but it's not really an achievement as per se. The permanent seats are the ones who really call the shots. And so the PR stuff, those things don't matter. What is the issue on the ground, and how do we even solve our security things at the borders, right? And these are the substance of it as compared to the PR and the aesthetics of looking good, which we like to do, but then the inside is a problem.
Exactly. Pretty much checking things off, you know, a checklist, and then you're like, okay, we launched it, we're done.
Exactly.
But as to whether or not we'll get it done is another thing.
Absolutely.
Typical example, the Right to Information Bill was passed into law. Well, it took forever, but eventually it was passed. But how to get information remains an issue. But Emily.
Another example is the COVID-19 tracker.
Oh, that
the app. Yes, I mean, there was a flamboyant launch.
Virtual launch
and all of that. But what was it supposed to bring about?
Sure.
What has happened to it?
Right.
Yes.
I mean, a number of issues or a number of examples we can definitely cite. But let's look at something Professor Barfour Jimendia said at the forum. Well, this statement was made within a context that it's a laudable call, fix the country, but he thought if we're trying to put everything at the doorstep of the president, then perhaps that call would be a bit myopic. Did you find anything wrong with that statement, indicating that perhaps the campaign is myopic within that context?
Well, I don't think we can put everything at the doorstep of the president. Like we've rightly said, it can't take just the government to handle this problem. So I wouldn't call it myopic, but of course, the reason why the campaign has come up is because things, like you said, we seem to focus mostly, we increase our negatives than the positives. So yes, we start something, but you don't see anything forthcoming. But the negative aspects seem to thrive. So if we're calling for the country to be fixed, then we believe that the positives can also thrive in the same manner. So it's not a myopic in a sense. However, everybody needs to play their part. And who needs to play a bigger part? We all need to sacrifice. But who has the power to change things? Who has the power to get things running, to get things rolling? And that's why I would say that it's not exactly myopic. However, we need to apportion, I wouldn't say apportion blame, all right, but to call whoever is in power to
demand accountability.
Thank you. You gave me the right word, to demand accountability. Like I always say, in Ghana, nobody is held accountable. Right. So you do whatever it is and you get away with it. Nobody.
Do you think there are avenues for that, holding people accountable, duty bearers accountable? Do you think there are avenues, or all we have is, yes, you get onto the air like we are now, talking about things, hoping that some duty bearer somewhere would have a conscience and they would prick them and would do certain things.
Well, unfortunately, I don't think anyone's conscience is going to be pricked enough for them to do something about it. But we have our court systems. The wheels of justice grind slowly, as we always say. However, I think that if we follow the course, we are going to get to it. I'll give an example with One Ghana movement, for instance. June 3rd just passed. We are in court on behalf of the victims. Okay, we have our defendants, because we want to hold people accountable. It's not just about getting compensation for the victims, but the right things have to be done. Which institutions, according to the Commission of Inquiry, there were some findings, okay? Some institutions which were culpable or which were supposed to do some work that they didn't do. So if you had done your work, we wouldn't have had the level of disaster which occurred 6 years ago. So we are in court and we are fighting it. It's taken a while, but we are not relenting, because we believe that the right process has to be followed for the right thing to be done. Right. Exactly. So we can't just sit and hope that as we speak, the people are going to listen, or the powers that be will listen and then take action. It won't happen. People have to be held accountable, whichever way we can. And one of these ways is the law courts.
Right. And you talk about something which, I mean, I think over the years we've been talking about this on the show here. The fact that until there's sanction, you wouldn't have that change you want, because human beings or human nature is governed by sanctions and, if you like, rewards.
Right.
Even animals learn that way.
Yes.
So until we begin to do that, definitely, there's no deterrence.
Exactly.
And I think that is also becoming a subculture, which we definitely need to deal with in the years.
It's actually not just a subculture.
Not a sub, it's actually the culture.
It's a major culture. It's something that keeps happening. We talk about how... oh, great. I was going to talk about corruption, but let's just look at...
oh, we'll get to corruption. Corruption
let's just look at the sirens. You know, how the big cars, they flout traffic regulations just because, well, no one can say exactly where they are going, but it's a constant thing. Yesterday, I encountered not less than 4 of them on the aviation airport stretch, you know, and you wonder what exactly is happening. Where exactly are you going? Recently, they came out with a list of people who should not flout those regulations. But guess what? Just yesterday, I was out and it happened. So who is in charge of holding these people accountable? You know, as you put out the rules or you put out the structures, then you ensure that if you flout the rule, this is the sanction that goes with it, regardless of who you are. Because like we said earlier, the leaders are also citizens. So they should not be above the law. You do the wrong thing, you are held accountable for it. But nobody is held accountable. And because of that, in Ghana, you know, there's something that Nana Aredamwa, he's an author, says. He says, things start with a vim of boiling beans and they die with something of a fart. I've forgotten the quote, but it's a really interesting quote that he always says. It starts with, in Ghana, things start with a vim of boiling beans and they die with the dignity of a fart. You know, so that's how it always is. The policy comes out and everyone is talking about it. We are also sure it's going to work. Give it a week or two. Nothing happens. Literally nothing. It dies out.
Right.
And then nobody is holding anyone accountable for it. So it's going to continue because
people just go away scot-free. And Mami, let me come to you. Still on that, the accountability avenues, do we have them? Are they available? Do we need to create them ourselves if they're not available? And this whole thing about, you know, people being made to go away scot-free and so there's no deterrence in the system.
Right. One of the key things is, well, within the short term would be the citizens now have to start holding leaders accountable, right? And so whether it's through agencies or NGOs, people being able to start speaking up and saying, hey, we demand this and we want this to be fixed. Like, for example, on the road, if a car is doing that and we all decide on this lane that we're not going to let you pass, right? Or asking the police on that, who maybe the police office or something around there, we want to see you on the Spintex Road at this time. Yesterday when I was going home, Spintex Road, you know where the East Legon traffic light is? Those coming from Accra, I don't know if you know. This policeman was sitting on a bench under a tree facing the wall or something. the thing was red, people were going, there was confusion. He turned again and kept talking. And I said, he's just not bothered. Now, I don't know why he's not, whether he's been paid, I don't know, I can't speak to that. But you see, one of the things that we also need to realize about, talking about going to the president and holding him accountable, the political system is such a way that when you're about to run for office, you need money. It's driven so much by money that people, foreign companies invest in your campaign, locals invest in your campaign, you owe people. And the people you have to give roles to who cannot do the work. And so even deep down you may have good intentions, but you have people who you want to be in power or who are controlling things, who shouldn't be controlling things, but because they help you come. I mean, do you know how much it costs to be an MP? Look at hundreds of thousands of dollars. How does someone come up with that kind of money? So now you sit in Ghana, you know why some of the things don't work? Because people who control Ghana are not even in Ghana.
Yes.
There are companies that are running the show and you are sitting here, you don't know what's happening. And that is why...
That's why I keep going back to how our politics is done. Is that perhaps... Because you look at it and it can be traced to that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a problematic system. It came also through the structural adjustment programs in the early 90s. It was underpinned by the idea that if you don't reform your system, you can't get loans. And so in this system, anybody can give someone money to go and run for president. It's about how much money you have, right?
Exactly.
And the backing. And they go into power. Now you have to appease so many people and your hands are tied. So you want accountability, right? And so I think one of the key things is that short-term solving it, begin to have all these agencies that say they speak for the people, civil society organizations, the church, all these people, beginning to hold them, ask them questions. Let your leaders see that you are informed. You don't have to wait for the information. Begin to search and begin to ask critical questions. I even said, man, I'm waiting for the day when all our ex-presidents who are still alive, right, can have a forum and they allow Ghanaians to ask them questions. Tell us why you didn't get it right. Like having that kind of conversation with the people. But someone has to put it together. And so who's going to take the initiative to do all of these things? And I really feel like, and I'm going to say this, like, the current president, I don't subscribe to any political party, but this current president has the potential to go down as one of the best presidents if he takes this Fix Ghana thing seriously and begins to ask himself, like, how do we get people who can do the work to do the work? Really, really, like, if he can do that, the next 3 years, he would have at least left with a legacy of, like, I did something. Because people are tired. And it's not just this party. It's because there's COVID, there's a global economic recess.
Right.
Right, so...
We'll be moving on to look at corruption next, but your last part of the submission brings in this other issue. I mean, I think we've been talking about it. You said to get the right people to do the job.
Right.
But we just talked about how political party activities is funded.
Right.
And so at the end of the day, whether or not you're able to bring in the right people depends on who you've got around you. And I think that has been a challenge.
Absolutely.
Because, for instance, let's look at security. We had the Justice Emil Short Commission from the Iowa to West Wogan issue, and it obviously turned out or came to light that national security is staffed by political party apparatchiks.
Right.
It's a fact.
Right.
Undeniably a fact. And so talking about square pegs in round holes, for instance, obviously you see what is happening if you don't get the right people around you to do the job, to get the job done.
Absolutely.
And so until perhaps we get that situation fixed, how we do our politics, how we fund our politics, we'll definitely have these challenges. And it also breeds corruption.
Absolutely.
And it takes us into the issue of corruption, Emily.
Yeah.
How has this government fared? Okay, not necessarily this government, but how, as a country, have we dealt with corruption? Corruption remains a number one issue, if not the issue, when it comes to political campaigns and people, you know, asking that let's change this government because this government is corrupt. Consistently, it's one of the deciders.
Yeah. So corruption, I don't even know where to start from, because corruption is a big issue for us.
Emily, let's take a break. When we come back, then we go straight into the issues about corruption, and we'll be taking some snippets from what Manasseh Azuri said at the public forum. This is the Key Points. We're live on TV3, also live on 3FM 92.7. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're still watching and listening to the Key Points. We're live on TV3, also live on 3FM 92.7, online at 3news.com, also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. So we've been having a discussion about the Fix the Country movement on the back of the public forum that was organized by Media General this week, asking the question, whose duty is it to fix a country and how is that going to be done? In the studio with me, we have Mame Awinado Kanyirige and also Emily Kanyir here, all speakers, or both speakers, at the public forum. Emily is with the One Ghana movement and Mame is with the Black Bridge Consulting as a consultant. On Zoom now, we've been joined by Felicity Nelson. She's a broadcast journalist and also one of the conveners of hashtag Fix the Country. Felicity, good morning and thanks for joining us.
Good morning, thank you for having me.
I hope you're good.
Yes, I'm very well, thank you.
Right, so yes, it's that time of the week. We're here to look at issues. Obviously, Fix the Country movement is still a topical one. But before that, let's take a listen to a story here which is going to situate the discussion in some real perspective, particularly looking at the development from the Supreme Court this week. So let's take a listen to that and I'll come to you, Felicity.
The Supreme Court quashed the High Court order which prevented the Fix the Country campaigners from embarking on a demonstration. The Apex Court, presided over by Justice Yarpo, indicated that the High Court's order was in error. In restraining the protesters, the High Court stated that they are not to hit the streets until such a time that the appropriate authority lifts the COVID-19 restrictions on public gathering. The campaigners insist this order is unlawful, as under the High Court's rules, injunctions granted without arguments from the affected persons ought to last for just 10 days. It therefore ruled that the judge erred. The court proceeded to quash that portion of the order that barred the group indefinitely. The group says the decision by the court is a win for democracy.
Rule of law has prevailed over tyranny. It is very welcoming. We are glad that the Supreme Court has seen reason to gather and express our civil and our civic duties as a people, to express our pleasure with the direction of the nation. This ruling will send a strong signal to people in authority that the rule of law still works, and that no one's flimsy excuse of not wanting us to gather will be tolerated in this country.
The Ghana Police Service on Thursday, May 6, secured a restraining order from an Accra High Court presided over by Justice Ruby Aite to stop the planned protest. The restraining order follows the affidavits filed by the police against the conveners of the protest march pursuant to Section 16 of the Public Order Act 1994, Act 491. The campaigners then took the protest to social media, generating hashtags and piling pressure on government to fix the challenges. From students, politicians, celebrities, and social commentators, the hashtag resonated with many and has compelled government ministries and agencies to organize press conferences to account for their stewardship.
Right. Felicity, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Good. So obviously that decision by the Supreme Court was a major one for you as Fix the Country movement, as it paves the way for, whatever it is you plan to do in terms of demonstrating to support your cause. Let us understand how that makes you feel.
Well, the thing is, well, as quite a few people have said, it was a kind of theoretical win, but not a practical one. So we won in the sense that the injunction was voided, but we still are going back to, we're still in court with the police. We're going back to court on the 14th, that's Monday, we're going back to the High Court. So I'm sure that I can imagine, I can't see what's going to happen in court, but I'm sure the police will probably still, even if, let's say, the court said to go ahead and have the protest, the police might probably seek that decision they might appeal that decision. So I think it's going to be quite a long process, honestly. I don't think it's so straight, simple and clear cut. So for now, I think I'm kind of resistant to be too hopeful. I'm just going to see what happens, hope for the best, but I'm not going to kind of be too excited. But I'm glad that the Supreme Court, of course, gave that decision. It instilled some faith in the judicial service. So yeah, that was a positive thing.
Right. Now, so what are the plans of the movement to ensure that, the momentum that you have garnered so far is maintained?
Well, so at the moment, one of the things that we're doing is we're trying to mobilize people across the country. So we're trying to mobilize people across the country. So that's like, we're trying to get people who would, because whenever we do want to go on a protest, we need people on the ground. So we're trying to call district, trying to mobilize people. I'll give you the number a bit later on if people want to, just before I leave, and if people want to mobilize within their districts, because it's something that it's not just about Accra. It's not just about the people who have issues in Accra. We want people who have issues across the country to feel a part of the movement. To maintain the momentum, funny enough, I think this continuous resistance by the police and this extremely antagonistic relationship that they seem to have with us is actually having an effect on how many people feel, it's actually helping And it's building momentum because more people are thinking, you know what, actually this is getting ridiculous. One protest, people want to go on. Why are you not allowing them to go on the protest? And people feel aggrieved. So I think, and even looking at what happened with the Sir John's funeral, the number of people there, the fact that we had people like the president himself at a funeral that was clearly breaching the COVID rules, all of this is helping to build momentum because people are realizing that at every level when it comes to leadership, there's real failures. So we don't even really we don't have to do much. I think that the failures by leadership on its own is building momentum. So it's not us, we don't have to do anything. Even just sitting back, there's continuous, like, what's happening now with the whole vaccine conversation. So I think it's just continuous. The people are feeling more inclined to believe that Fix the Country is a legitimate call to action.
But aren't you concerned that if you're unable to, maybe hit the streets to engage in the protest that you had earlier on anticipated, perhaps it would lose some visibility? Aren't you concerned about that?
It will do so.
It would lose some visibility, particularly to people who are not on social media.
Yeah. So the thing is, the protest is not the only thing that we want. Like, that's just like probably the most visible thing, but that's not the only thing that we're seeking for. So even if we never go on a, it's about because for a lot of people, for a long time, people have felt like they go and vote maybe once every 4 years, and that's the only time that they engage with the democratic process, and that's the only time that they hold the government accountable. So it's even for us, even starting conversations, awakening people to the fact that even after you vote, even if you voted 2 months ago, you're still allowed to ask for more. You're still allowed to have better standards. You're still allowed to hold your government accountable. For us, that's a win. So it's not just about being able to go out and protest. It's about letting the masses understand and appreciate the fact that the leadership model that we're running here isn't working. The leaders are not working for us. A lot of them seem to be very self-seeking. They're not ensuring that they're working in the best interest of the average Ghanaian person. So for us, it's about awakening people to that reality and letting people understand that it's not just about when there's an election now, someone's going to come and give us 20 cedis and a pack of fried rice, and then we're fine. And we're going to wait another 4 years till he comes along with another pack of fried rice and a pack of 20 cedis. No, we deserve better, and we must demand for more. So it's not just about the protest. There's so many others. It's much more complex than just holding the protest. Because okay, you hold a protest, and then what? Let's say we hold a protest tomorrow. That doesn't mean the country is fixed, because there still needs to be a level of engagement with the public. You need to have still need to keep a watchful eye over government to ensure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So it's not just about the protest. So anyone who thinks it's just about organizing the protest, it is much bigger than that.
Right. Now, Felicity, earlier on, I think around the time when the injunction order was obtained, or just about the time it was, applied for, I think there was an opportunity for the leadership of #Fix the Country to meet with some members of government, correct? And subsequently, has there been any other engagement of that sort? I'm asking this in trying to understand what the other approach to your, if you like, campaign is. Because yes, you're trying to rally people around and mobilizing people, but then there's also the other side of actual engagement with government. And how is that going?
I want to kind of explain that we were not invited, it was not a meeting that said, oh, hello, hi, Fix the Country conveners, would you like to meet XYZ, a minister or member of government? We were supposed to have a meeting with the IGP. This was after he had refused, when we sent our application to have the protest, and he refused it. And he said, oh, the IGP wants to have a meeting with you. So we were under the impression that we're going to have a meeting with the IGP about the protest. We get to just about to get to the police headquarters. They say, oh, we've moved it to the National Service Ministry. We said, National Security Ministry. We said, okay, that's fine. We get there, the IGP is not in the room. So the Minister of Finance, Interior Minister, Minister of Defense, the AG, a few security capos, and the conversation is about why we shouldn't have the protest. And so for me, first of all, they acted in bad faith. We didn't go, they didn't invite us into a meeting. Because if you want to have a meeting, you're truly looking to engage. And there has to be transparency and honesty. So you say, oh, hello, we want to engage you on the issues you want to protest on. For example, can you come in and let's have a chat? And these are the people that will be in attendance, X, Y, and Z. You don't tell us, come for a meeting with the IGP, and then you get there, and then you're basically ambushed with these other members of government. So first of all, that was not, it wasn't, they didn't act in good faith. If you want to engage people and you go the right way, you write a letter, you state who's going to be there, these are the things that we want to talk about, you do it properly. There's a process. They didn't follow that process. You don't ambush people and say, oh, well, we tried to engage them. No, you did not try to engage us. However, moving forward, it's not just about us as a conveners. It's not just about what problems I have as Felicity. If they want to, for example, when the NDC was doing their manifesto, they said they went around the country and engaged people across the country. This is the level of engagement that I want to see government doing. If they want to say, we want to fix the country, we don't actually know what we're doing. First of all, you shouldn't be there if you don't know what you're doing. However, I think it's also good to get the feedback from the people that you're serving. So go around the country, across the country, go into the villages, go into the towns, go into the district by district, town by town, engage the people there, speak to them on what their issues are, collate that information, come back, and then develop a national plan around that, and a plan that is binding to every single government that comes in. So not just you go around, you create this whole national plan based on everything that everybody needs, and then this government comes in, they do a bit. No, it has to be binding on every subsequent government, so that people just can't come in and start one building project here, start a hospital there, leave it. All of this waste, we need to get rid of that. So it's not just about what I want, because my middle class problems are not representative of the average Ghanaian person's problems. And we as conveners fully appreciate the fact that it's not representative of everybody, our problems. So we need government to go down and engage the people, speak to the people, go to the grounds, the way they can campaign and get to the grounds. I expect that same level of effort and attention when they're going down there to seek people's views on what needs to be fixed in the country.
Right. Now, Felicity, what would you say to people who would say that, well, so the government is currently in place governing or in accordance with its manifesto, if you like, because obviously before it came into power, it campaigned on a manifesto. And so that is what it's implementing now. So at this point, if you think that manifesto is not what will necessarily lead to the desires of the people, then perhaps you should, as a group or as a movement, be feeding the government with these views from the people. Wouldn't you agree?
So first of all, the fact that government should expect that I, Felicity, or any of the conveners or any average Ghanaian person should be doing their job for them is laughable to me. That is not my job. You have a job. You're supposed to be serving the interests of the people. If you are not engaging the people enough, it is not my job to come in and start doing that engagement for you. And so, yes, I can relay the information, but that is not my job. That's essentially what we're saying. They cannot continue to pass the buck. Like they're being paid for a job. Do your job. And we pay them very, very well. So it's not this idea that you have a job and then someone else must come, a private person must come in and do your job for you. Yes, we can do that and it's supplementary, but there should be no obligation. We should not start looking to individuals when the problem is the fact that people who are in positions of power are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. That's the issue. They need to do what they're supposed to be doing. Anything else that comes, civil society organization, all of those things are supplementary and they're good, but we should not start focusing on, because a lot of the time we tend to find that we actually hold civil service, civil society organizations and private citizens, we even hold them more accountable than we do the people that we vote for. And if they have this manifesto, even the things in the manifesto, have they managed to do even the things? One district, one factory. How many districts have factories? So even if we're going by even just their manifesto, they haven't delivered on their manifesto. In 4 years, they didn't deliver on that manifesto, making Accra the cleanest city in Africa. It's been 5 years. Accra is dirtier than it was 5 years ago. So what are you talking about? So even when it comes to just even about the manifesto, even on that, even the things they promised to do, they have not done.
Very well. Now, we need to wrap up, Felicity. So what are the next steps for the Fix the Country movement? What are we to expect from the
So we're going to
movement?
court on Monday. Of course, the High Court and the police, still dragging us to court. So we're going to court on Monday. So it's only after Monday that we can really determine what the next course of action will be regarding the protest. We can't preempt anything. But before I go, I just wanted, just a moment. I just wanted to give the number that you need to if you want to join. Sorry, just a moment. Sorry. If you want to if you want to mobilize in your local community.
Very well. So a number that people can call and...
Yeah, they can text and they can WhatsApp as well.
Okay.
Just if they will just want to mobilize in their local community. Just a moment.
Very well.
Sorry.
I mean, whilst you pull that up, let me engage Emily and Mami here as well. We were touching on the corruption issue, but if there's anything you'd like to, react to or say in respect of what Felicity just shared with us, you're free to go. Emily, let me start with you.
Well, so it's interesting all what she has said, and I'd like to agree mostly with all what she said. If the government of the day is expecting people, like you asked her, to be the ones to bring to the fore what needs to be done, then there's a bit of a problem there, because even before you campaign, your manifesto tells a lot about what you intend to do.
Exactly. So that was the point. So
Yes.
currently they have their manifesto they're
Exactly.
working with. And so if the suggestion is that that isn't going down well with the people, because obviously that manifesto was put together after consultation. At least that's what we're made to believe.
Yes.
So if that has changed, then perhaps they would need to know.
Well, they would need to know. That's why there are assemblies. We have assemblymen. We have the DCEs. There should be some town hall meetings. We have to sacrifice and do some work as well, but there has to be that work on the ground, grassroots movements, to be able to get the voice of the people, to understand the specific needs of the people. Because in development work, you'd realize that there are some people or there are some communities where people would go there and probably put up, let's say, a library. But that is not the need of the people on the ground at the moment. They probably need a toilet, a public toilet. But you go and you put a library there and it goes unused because that's not the need of the people. So that grassroots movement has to be done, and it has to be done. It could be done by various organizations, but government should take special interest in that to ensure that they are able to speak to the people, understand the needs, and work towards achieving those.
Very well. Mami.
Yeah, I think for me, I agree with Felicity and Emily. Yes, government has to be held accountable to do it. The big question is that if they're not going to do it, and while we are pushing them to do it, what are we doing in the process? And just a quick story. Yesterday, there's a part of my house, and I saw that someone had spilled water. And I was looking for the person who spilled the water, but everybody had gone to bed. So I'm thinking, do I wake people up to come? Somebody has to take care of this, because I didn't do it, and it's not my job. But then you know what happened now? Somebody said to me, Mommy, but that's the same mentality people use every day. And then, because you know what happened? I stepped in the thing and I made a mess somewhere. No matter what's going to happen, we'll all feel it. And it's the same way you go to a public toilet, someone said, I didn't pee on the seat, I won't wipe it, right? And so someone else comes and does the same thing. And then we make a mess and a mess. So there has to be, some kind of partnership between the private sector and the government working together for Ghana. But I've come to a place where I said that, like, if government won't do it, that's why a lot of people are trying to do stuff now. We're going to wait for you. We don't have time to wait, because if they keep doing this, when we get up, we don't wait for you. You take the power back in your hands.
Right. And briefly, let's touch on corruption. How has that been dealt with, corruption? Why do we still refer to corruption as an endemic issue? Consistently, it's an endemic issue, it's a canker. It's eating us up, but we set up the Office of the Special Prosecutor. We know how that ended.
So you see, corruption is a symptom of a bigger problem, and so sometimes we want to deal with corruption as a cause, but it's a symptom. And so sometimes poverty is a cause of a lot of things. And that is why if you pay attention to Rwanda has done well with corruption. But you see, the Rwandese, people don't understand. They came from genocide. They've seen the worst. And so now when you get a leader who is trying, everybody is all involved. When he says, today we are all going to do this, everybody goes and does, right? But you know, if you think about discipline in Ghana, for example, right? Even like cheating, exam room, grown-ups do it. High school people are cheating. You understand what I'm trying to say? This country where they said Canaan, we are so disciplined, we fear God.
Oh, yeah.
On the road, someone's close from church, they're driving on the side, or even insult you after they've done the wrong thing, right? So the question is that, where is the problem? I want to tell you the honest truth. You want to change anything, start in the home. And the corruption thing, it's a poverty, it's a scarcity mindset. That is why sometimes you want to deal with corruption, for example. Sometimes there's even more than enough, but people still feel they need to take more.
Sure.
Right? So I was wondering, where is that coming from? And that is why, how do I indoctrinate, or how do I take an adult who is 40-something?
To change that mindset.
That is why
young.
it's that you can't win this fight if you focus on the older generation.
Catch them young.
Thank you.
And
that's why I want to leave. That's why I said, for me, the best thing we can do with this older generation is put to them that if you won't leave anything for us at all, because you've got a lot of debt, at least like help us start the fight to bring change. Even if you won't leave anything.
Help us with that, and that would
go
down in history.
And they will take care of the work.
Sure.
The rest, yes.
Emmy, concluding remarks?
Yes, to add to what Mami has said, any society that wants to build anything meaningful has values, has strong values. I remember at the last World Cup, there were stories about how the Japanese segment, whenever they got up, they ensured that they cleaned up the place. You know, integrity, cleanliness is part of the values of the Japanese system.
Right.
And they study this right from infancy in school. If I ask you today, what is the Ghanaian value? What would you say? We pride ourselves in the fact that Ghanaians are humble people. I tell you, we are not exactly humble.
Hospitable.
We are not. We are hospitable. But that's not the truth. What is the Ghanaian value? And these are things that we need to be able to figure out. What are the values we want to grow up with? Mami rightly said, if we tell, you cannot teach an old dog new tricks. No. So those who are much older, today, they are not going to go back and try to imbibe values that will be helpful to them today. But if we start from some place, we build that up, we know that in the future, we are going to have a better Ghana. Right. And a Ghana devoid of corruption. Because it is this poverty mentality, you know, oh, I don't have, so when I get, I have to amass it for myself. Many people don't even think about those coming after them. No, they just want all of it for themselves. And that is the major problem in all sectors, in all spheres, be it in government, be it in our private offices, even in our homes. You know, that element of sharing or leaving something meaningful for the next person to continue with is missing totally. So we need to start building on our values and ensure that with these values, we can get somewhere great.
And target the very young ones,
the very young
formative age. Let me go back to Felicity. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Right. So if the number is ready, kindly let it.
I just wanted to comment on something that Mami said.
In 30 seconds, because we need to wrap up.
Okay. The reality, she talked about the fact that people drive on the sides of roads and all of that stuff. The reality is people do bad things, but it's about enforcement of the laws. So if people are not enforcing laws, of course, it's not that people who live abroad and in countries where people drive better. It's not because they're better people. It's because there's no enforcement actually does their job. So again, leadership failing. But of course, Ghanaians have a part to play in developing the country. But until leadership does the right thing, the leaders, you see them driving on the side of the road daily. You see them going through traffic lights, red lights daily. So all of this doesn't help. But anyway, the number, if you want to mobilize in the local community,
yes,
is 054 921 4976. So the number, if you want to mobilize people for Fix the Country in your local community, is 054 921 4976.
Very well. Thank you, Felicity. The number again is 0549214976. Call, and I'm sure you'll be given directions as to how you can mobilize within your communities for the Fix the Country movement. And let me say a big thank you to my guests here, Mame Awinado Kanyirige and Emily Kanyer Nur. Yes. I hope I got that right. Yes. And also we had Felicity Nelson joining us on Zoom. It's been an interesting time here, and we do appreciate that. And I hope I do get to have more females join me here every Saturday. But this is where we bring the conversation on the Fix the Country movement to an end. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we're looking at COVID-19 vaccines and the investigative reports that suggest that Ghana bought COVID-19 vaccine, specifically the Sputnik V vaccine, at $19 per dose. And that is almost 100% above the manufacturer's price of $10. We shall be looking at that very soon. See you shortly. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're still watching and listening to the Keypoints. We're live on TV3, also live on 3FM 92.7 and online at 3news.com, also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. So we're moving on next to look at the story, an investigative report that was put out by a Norwegian newspaper, Verdens Gang, and it indicates or suggests that Ghana, among other countries, had purchased COVID-19 vaccines, specifically the Sputnik V vaccine, at a price which is way higher than that given by the manufacturer. So Ghana, for instance, is said to have purchased it at $19 per dose, whereby the manufacturer is pegging its price at $10. It has raised a number of issues in country, and we shall be discussing this. We are privileged to be joined by one of the authors of the investigative report, Marcus Tobiasen. He's with the Norwegian newspaper Verdens Gang. And also we have Mr. Kwame Sapon Asiedu. He's a pharmacist and a D&D research fellow with CDD Ghana, joining us on Zoom. We're expecting to be joined by Honorable Kwabena Minta Akando, the MP for Draboso, and also a ranking member on the Health Committee in Parliament. And good morning, gentlemen, Marcus and Mr. Sapon Asiedu. It's good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Great. But before we delve into the conversation, let's take a story put together about the Sputnik V COVID vaccine, briefly.
Ghana is paying $19 per dose for the Sputnik vaccine, which is quite a lot more than what the Russians are selling it for directly, which is $10 per dose. Do you reckon that Ghana has paid or what's your comment on the price that Ghana has paid?
Yeah, Marcus, we had a period in which we had gotten close to 1 million AstraZeneca vaccines, which had been sort of well administered and deployed, and had very little left, and then we had the second doses coming up. So we were really forced to look at, how to get some new doses into the system, and I think we agreed to 300,000 transaction in terms of Sputnik vaccines, which we did, and I think the Ministry of Health is looking at maybe another 1 million vaccines, but really that one is on condition that we don't get the AstraZeneca or Johnson & Johnson or Pfizer in the interim period.
But would you comment on the fact that the price was almost double of what the Russians normally charge if they sell directly?
Well, I don't know that, this is the Ministry of Health.
Yeah.
In terms of that, and I'm expecting that,
Because that's my question, or sort of the outlook of the article, one of the central questions is if countries that are left behind to find vaccines for themselves, that are far behind in the line, if they get penalized doubly, that first they have to wait for vaccines longer than a number of wealthy countries that have hoarded vaccine for themselves. And then on top of that, they have to pay a higher price for the vaccines because they have to go through intermediaries like middlemen. Is that something you fear might happen to Ghana?
I think, Marcus, if you look at trace the global financial architecture, you realize the inequities embedded in the system, and then you look at sort of the story of these vaccines, and it's really quite stagnant and unacceptable. I think that there's about 1.4 billion or close to 1.5 billion doses that have been administered globally at this time, of which Africa is about 20 million. So you can see under 2% of us being done. You can almost say that EU ordered about 1.6 billion vaccines, which is about 3.5 doses per person. Canada, about 10 doses per person. And then Africa, we've administered, maybe 8 doses per 1,000 people.
Yes, exactly.
So it's just a ridiculous situation in a pandemic which knows no boundaries.
But does it also put you at risk of having to pay a higher price through middlemen?
Well, that leaves, countries in Africa subject to, more of such aid dependencies and such unethical, commercial transactions.
Right, so that wasn't necessarily a story there, but it was an interview by Marcus Tobassen, the Norwegian journalist, with Finance Minister Mr. Ken Ofori-Atta there. Let me go to Zoom where we have Marcus. Marcus, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Great. So obviously the investigative report is, raising a lot of issues, but just preliminarily, let us understand what set you on this path.
So the thing that initiated this piece was actually a small article in Modern Ghana, written by an anonymous contributor, making mention of a character named Umar Farrokh Sahor. So Umar Farrokh Sahor is quite a well-known character in Norway. Though he is a Pakistani national, he has been wanted by Norwegian police for more than 10 years. And this article made mention that Umar Farrokh Sahor was involved in negotiating a vaccine deal in Ghana. And that is what spurred our investigation.
Oh, right. So it was that article which mentioned Umar that led you to this. And it led you to other countries as well, Guyana, Iraq, and Pakistan. You said all because of Umar.
Yes. A few weeks later, we were actually able to obtain an audio recording of a Norwegian businessman assigning a role to himself as a middleman in this deal. So that also was a big stepping stone in this, drawing attention to it. And then we spent several weeks trying to document what had actually happened there. And as you mentioned, we found traces that these middlemen in the Emirates have been selling vaccines not only to Ghana, but also Guyana in South America and Pakistan. And they've also made attempts to sell vaccines to, amongst others, South Africa.
Right. Now, let's just understand. So they're acting as middlemen. The Sheikh and Umar you talk about, they are acting as middlemen. Let us understand how they fit into the architecture of vaccine procurement within the WHO, system, or the system of vaccine procurement. Let's just understand how they come in.
I would say that they operate entirely on the outside of the WHO, because the WHO has not granted emergency approval of the Sputnik vaccine. So what has happened is that the Russians or the Gamaleya Institute, which developed the Russian vaccine, have quite a special way of distributing it. It is not the Russian government itself that are negotiating these deals, but the Russian investment fund, known as the Russian Direct Investment Fund, or RDIF for short.
Very well.
So what we found was that RDIF is making, for example, direct deals with countries like Slovakia or Hungary in Europe, where they are selling the vaccines at just below $10 per dose.
Okay.
But we also found documents saying that RDIF, the Russian Direct Investment Fund, has appointed this anonymous, newly established company in the Emirates called Eurogulf as an exclusive seller for a number of territories. Eurogulf again has appointed this Sheikh Ahmed Al Maktoum as their sales agent. And it is the private office of the Sheikh Ahmed Al Maktoum who then again has made this vaccine deal with Ghana.
Very well. We'll be interrogating that whole arrangement in a few minutes, but let me quickly move on to Mr. Sapong here. Now, can you hear me, Kwame Sapong Esedu?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. So, listening to the fact that WHO hasn't granted emergency use of Sputnik V, and the fact that we as a country have gone ahead to procure or get into this agreement with the middlemen for the supply of this, if you like, unapproved vaccine for emergency use by the WHO. What does that tell you?
Well, you see, we need to put this into context.
Sure.
And I've not said good morning to Marcus because we go a long way. We need to put this into context. The first thing we need to say is that the WHO not giving emergency use approval in itself doesn't mean that you cannot use a vaccine. That's why you heard Marcus say that Slovakia went into a direct arrangement. I know Czech Republic has done that as well. And I know Hungary is actually, with Orban, is actually in the process of doing a direct deal. I'm saying this because we are giving the impression that direct deals are not possible, but I know of so many of them. In fact, there's Guinea in Africa, which has done a direct deal as well.
So the fact that they haven't given the approval for emergency use doesn't mean countries cannot transact for that?
No, because you see, you need to look at the architecture of emergency use authorization.
Right.
The WHO understands that there are a number of countries who do not have national regulators who are capable of looking into these medicines and certifying them as authentic enough and registering them. Ghana is not one of those countries. Ghana has the FDA.
Right.
So the FDA can look into it and then give its local approval. So if you look at Sputnik, for example, the Hungarians have given it approval, the Czechs have given it approval, even though the European Medicines Agency hasn't yet and the WHO hasn't yet. So that doesn't make it illegal. So that in itself, it raises a bit of a red flag where it means that our regulator has to give emergency use authorization.
Indeed, they have, according to the Ministry of Health response.
But that is where the problem starts from, because those who applied for the emergency use authorization in Ghana have no link to the sheikh who is bringing it in. And that is in breach of the WHO guidance of movement of drugs in international commerce, because he hasn't registered the product in Ghana. So unless he is in agreement with the person who has the license to distribute it in Ghana, I struggle with that arrangement to start with. So fundamentally, there is, for want of a word, an illegality when it comes to WHO movement of drugs in international commerce. And this question has been answered by the WHO itself, because Marcus asked the question at the last, WHO press conference. And I was listening in, and there was a clear answer given about this being part of the reasons why the WHO frowns on the use of middlemen, because you are not even sure that the vaccine you are bringing is authentic, because they haven't acquired the license in the country of use. And so that is something I wanted to place on record.
Right, that's important. But how much of a risk have we put ourselves in as a country by reason of this agreement then, given what you have told us?
I wouldn't say we've put ourselves at a risk by virtue of risking their citizens, because if the vaccines had arrived, the FDA would have had to obviously do sampling of it and then check to see the authenticity and all that. But we have put ourselves in a risk because I doubt if these guys are going to deliver. If you have followed their behavior in Pakistan, in fact, the Pakistan deal is actually being investigated by Transparency International as we speak. If you follow, they are trying to deal with Jordan and trying to deal with Iran. They are not likely to deliver. And you must bear in mind that in Ghana, they failed to deliver on their March date. They failed to deliver on their April date. They failed to deliver on their May date. What makes anyone think that they are going to deliver on their June or July date? So apart from the fact that the vaccine is overpriced, which I can speak into the cost in freight and all that, there are real issues about the characters we are dealing with. And if you listen to Marcus properly, why are we dealing with one person who is a fugitive from justice in Norway, another who was actually convicted and jailed in Norway but has moved to London, and their boss, who's actually the person who fronted the Ameri deal for which there was so much impropriety in Ghana. For me, what happened to due diligence? And that is the biggest question some of us want answered before we even move to the costing framework.
Right. Now, speaking of due diligence, let me make reference to the response by the Ministry of Health. By the way, have you seen that response, the Ministry of Health response to the media publication?
Yes, I've seen all the correspondence.
Right, but you see at paragraph 7, they suggest that they place the order for the 300,000 doses after some 15,000 doses had been delivered. What do you make of that? So they actually delivered 15,000 initially, and based on that, at least according to paragraph 7 of the response from the Ministry of Health, following that, they then placed the order for the 300,000.
Yes, I mean, if you followed this story, not just in Ghana, but in Pakistan, in Jordan, and other places, that is their stock in trade.
Okay.
Everyone would want to show you something for you to believe that they are authentic. That is in itself is a stock in trade. But you have to also realize that they delivered 15,000 and later delivered 5,000. The Sputnik vaccine comes as 2 doses, which are not the same. The first lot they delivered were not paired. So there was more of the second dose than the first. So even that couldn't be used initially until they brought in the next 5,000. That, again, for me, was a red flag. That should have been looked into.
Now, does this suggest then that there's been some exchange of cash? Because the idea then would be, let's use the 15,000 doses as a bait and see what we can get subsequently. Because then the subsequent order that came was 300,000 doses. Is it the norm that when such an order is placed, there's some transfer of cash to the potential supplier?
No, normally, if you listen to the interview between Marcus and Kenneth Oriata, he was clear that a LC, an LC is technically a payment. What a letter of credit strictly does is it gets the bank to hold the money and assure the supplier that you've got the money in there. So once it's delivered, the money goes into the account. So a letter of credit was issued. People would make the argument that, yes, it was a letter of credit, and therefore technically the country hasn't lost any money. But you are aware of our laws around causing financial loss to the state. If you do something that could potentially cause financial loss to the state, that should be looked into as well. So for me, that is the seriousness of the situation, where letters of credit were issued for something that potentially we are not going to be receiving to people who are of questionable character at a cost that is double what we should be paying. And that is something we need to be considering.
Very well. Marcus, I'll be coming back to you in a bit, but let me, conclude with Mr. Sapon Esiedi here, because I understand you need to be leaving us very shortly. But now let's understand this. The transaction between a country or a state with a middleman, a private entity, in the scheme of things, obviously puts the country in a certain position, rather than looking at it in terms of government-to-government transactions or relations, which obviously would inure to the benefit of the country. And if you're talking about a country, for instance, a country like Ghana, obviously that arrangement was not resorted to. The Ministry of Health indicates, or at least speaking to the Minister of Finance in Marcus's interview, there's a suggestion that that did not happen because of whatever reasons. But you, as a pharmacist within that space, let us understand, how difficult is it for countries to transact with countries at the level of governments, so that the risk of countries like Ghana resorting to middlemen like what we have done in this instance will not necessarily be the first point of call?
Right. So to answer this question, you need to draw back from, you see, the problem a lot of countries have made is they are seeking vaccines at the point of finished product, when the vaccines are ready. Some countries were smarter and went into the procurement much early. Like I talked about Guinea, they were involved in the clinical trials. There's Chile, who were involved in other clinical trials. So they had bilateral agreements that if you're doing trials in my country, then you're going to give me vaccines. There were others who also paid upfront, like for some amount of vaccines, because they felt that they would need them at a point in time. If you look at the statement by Joe Biden on Wednesday, about the way Russia is playing vaccine politics. It is clear that the Russians are using the vaccine as a bait. So there is a bit of geopolitical gerrymandering going on with the vaccine. I'll give you this, for example, with the European Union, they'll give to former Eastern Bloc countries X, Y, Z. So it's become difficult for you to deal with RDEF because if there's nothing in for them to deal with you directly, they would prioritize countries for which Russia has a geopolitical stake. And that is why it has become now difficult to have bilateral agreements.
Right.
But the question is, did we not know of vaccine development right from August of last year? What stopped us from hedging our bets like a lot of countries have done, like the UK did? And I don't even want to use the Western countries because you say, oh, we've got a lot of money. South Africa did that. Rwanda did that. Guinea did that. Chile did that. What stopped us from hedging our bets much earlier so that we wouldn't have this situation where we are dealing with what you call middlemen? And no one should tell me that can be done because as we speak now, the other newer Sputnik vaccine, the Sputnik Light, there's an agreement with Ghanaian entities to have the clinical trial in Ghana, which would lead to a bilateral agreement. So if we could have done this now, why didn't we do that then? And that is why sometimes I want us to disaggregate the issues so that people can realize that there is more to why we got ourselves here than just the conversation that it was an emergency. The point is we needn't have gotten here.
Very well. Hold on, I'll be coming back to you briefly, but let me go back to Marcus. Marcus.
Yes.
Right. So, as indicated earlier, your investigations took you to, a whole lot of places, Pakistan, Iraq, Guyana, and it appears from the report that the authorities you engaged with suggested that, well, they had to get into these transactions with these middlemen because they were desperate. They had to save their citizenry and all of that. And so they bought these vaccines at those prices, ranging from $19, $20 to $22.50 and all of that. Question is, in engaging them, did you believe that desperation narrative, which would necessarily make them buy it at such exorbitant prices? Or there was something more to that? Did you pick anything of that sort?
Well, I generally try not to make any assumptions on those kinds of matter. I would just say that is the explanation that we have been getting, not only from the government of Ghana, but also like from the vice president of Guyana of South America, who said that basically we found ourselves in a position where we would pay anything because we weren't getting vaccines anywhere else. And what I would say, it is right to assume that there is a sense of crisis around several governments trying to procure vaccines because there has been at least an inequity in the distribution and a scarcity. So as to whether or not it is a convenient way out to always like point to a crisis and say that we're doing anything, I think that is not for me to say, but I think that will be a point of debate on a lot of topics having to deal with like COVID-19 procurements, not only vaccines, but in how money are spent generally through those kind of crises.
Right. Now, Marcus, still on this issue about, the reason why some governments have bought the Sputnik V at exorbitant prices. I would want to know whether, I think earlier on you mentioned Slovakia and that they bought it at $9. Is that correct?
Just below $10. I think it's
just below $10. But so obviously, have you engaged any African country that has gone into this transaction, for instance, with these middlemen at a certain price which is lower than what is being quoted around the $19, $20, $22.50?
No, the only other price other than the mentioned sales, like in Ghana at $19, in Guyana at $20, in Pakistan at $22.50, and in Iraq we found a price list listing it at $20.
Right.
So
now,
is that quite consistent.
Very well. Is there any basis for you to think that, these governments or countries who bought these drugs could have gotten it at a much cheaper price?
Sorry, could you repeat that? There was
I'm saying, is there any basis? Do we have any idea whether or not these governments who have already procured the vaccines at $19 per dose, 22.5, could have actually gotten it at a much cheaper price? That is, if you work into the equation, the markup that perhaps a middleman would want to put on.
Well, there has been made, like in the press release that was put out by the Ministry of Health, they point to claiming that the $10 price is an ex-factory price, and pointing to things like logistics, insurances, and such. We've tried to have some conversation with people involved in global vaccine distribution on what would be a reasonable markup in terms of logistics costs.
Right.
And it's hard to make an argument that close to a 100% markup per dose would be reasonable. If you, for example, look at what the Ghanaian government has done in their calculation of what the cost is of the logistics of actually putting the jab in someone's arm, you exclude the cost of buying the vaccine, but what does it cost to have these facilities, transportation and such? I think they place it at between $2 and $3 per dose.
Right. Are you done?
Yes.
Okay, very well. Now, let me come back to you, Kwabena, on the price. So we've dealt with the lack of due diligence, which you raised earlier in your submissions. But now let's look at the price. $19, Ghana bought it at, which is almost 100% over and above the $10, which is a manufacturer's price. Sorry, Kwame, Sapon, do forgive me. And then there's 20, and then there's 22.50 across, I think Guyana and Pakistan and the rest. What would be the reasonable price in the scheme of things, considering that middlemen, quote unquote, legitimate middlemen who get into this transaction would obviously be looking out for some profits? But what would be a reasonable markup in the circumstances?
Well, I can't say that I am aware of contracts that have come to about $13.5. Marcus didn't want to put the exact number on, but we have an idea that it's about all the logistics comes to about 3.5, including markups and all that. So I am aware of contracts that are $13.5, and I am very concerned about the fact that we are tempted to pay $19, albeit we would say because it's a letter of credit, it hasn't been done. But that is how I'd want to end it before I leave, by saying that we could have got it much, much lower. Much,
much lower. And indeed, before you go briefly, still on the response by the Ministry of Health. Now, there are issues about timelines, which perhaps would put this issue into better perspective as well, because they are indicating that they had to get into this agreement because Ghana had been informed by COVAX that the AstraZeneca vaccines would not arrive till the end of June 2021. But we know that the COVAX facility helped us with the vaccines in March.
No, you see, that is where a lot of people get COVAX mixed up. COVAX was going to kick in at the end of Q1, and the vaccines were going to continue trickling in until about June because of the delivery arrangements they had with the Serum Institute of India and the fact that they were distributing to a wide number of countries. So any batch they got, they had to divide it up so that they could, and then they had to look at your logistical capability. I mean, how many doses you can receive, store, and put into arms before the next, all those things.
Right.
So when they said it wasn't going to come until June, it was because the Indian government then put a caveat in place because they were seeing excessive export of vaccine components. When they put that caveat in place, Serum Institute had to decrease their delivery to COVAX by 50%, which then meant that they wouldn't be able to reach Ghana with a second dose in about June. But that has now changed to after December because of the COVID outbreak in India, which has further constrained the vaccine supply chain. And indeed, that is a topic that was discussed yesterday at the G7. So that is where the Ministry of Health is coming from. But the truth of the matter is that information was known at the beginning of February. It was known by anyone who's in the vaccine supply chain. Marcus is laughing. We all knew it at the beginning of February. These are information that are now being put in the public domain as if they were unknowns. But we knew them, and some of us had spoken about them.
Right. Now, lastly, before you go, the 3.4, lastly, this is really the last one. Now, we are being told that 3.4 million doses is what we are targeting with regards to these middlemen. Now, look at 3.4 million as against what we've been able to do now as a country, close to about 900,000 doses or so in terms of the vaccines that have been administered. Looking at the 3.4 million as against what we've done, do you think that it's a good number to have put out there to say that by a certain time, I believe that is it October? October this year would have administered, looking at how we've been able to administer the first 900?
Well, when it comes to the administration, one thing I'll show is that Ghana has shown a lot of efficiency. I mean, if you realize that with the Democratic Republic of Congo vaccines that were about to expire, they landed them in Ghana and we're still able to use them before the expiry date. You must bear that in mind that countries like Malawi weren't able to use theirs and had to ban some. So when it comes to efficiency, I am confident that if we have the doses, they would deliver. And so that is what I was thinking of, and I believe that they would have hit the deadline if the vaccines were available. But now I doubt they would.
Very well. I think we can let you go now. That was Mr. Kwame Sapon with CAD. He's a pharmacist and a D&D research fellow with CDD Ghana. We'll take a break. When we come back, we continue our conversation with Marcus Tobiasen, the reporter with the Norwegian newspaper Verdensgang that put out the investigative report indicating the various prices that middlemen had sold COVID-19 vaccine, specifically the Sputnik V vaccine, to some countries, including Ghana. We'll also be joined by Honorable Kwabna Minta Akando when we get back. He's a ranking member on the Parliamentary Health Committee. See you shortly. Welcome back. You're still watching and listening to the Key Points. We're live on 3FM 92.7, also live on TV3 here in Accra and online at 3news.com, also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. So we're currently having a conversation looking at the COVID-19 vaccine, specifically Sputnik V vaccine, which is reported to have been purchased by Ghana at the cost of $19 per dose. And that is set to be almost 100% of the manufacturer's price of $10. We have on Zoom one of the reporters who put out that investigative report in the Norwegian newspaper Verdensgang, Marcus Tobiasen. Marcus, are you still there? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Now let's go into the issue about vaccine and the inequities around that. I believe that was at the heart of your investigation as well, because you do say that the world's richest countries have ordered 3, 4, 5, in fact, in some instances, 10 times more than the number of residents or citizens they have in their countries. And at the same time, we have the World Health Organization cautioning or indicating that a vast majority of manufacturers of the vaccines are selling to public entities or to COVAX and entities such as UNICEF. Now, poor countries or developing countries like Ghana really wouldn't, in the scheme of things, have much of an option, would they? What are the other pathways available to smaller countries or developing countries like Ghana, so that we don't get into the hands of, these kinds of middlemen, and in instances where desperation is cited, find ourselves in these kinds of with these kinds of prices?
So there has been two other main routes to take for a country like Ghana. One has been the International Vaccine Alliance, COVAX, and the other has been the Alliance of the African Union. What should be noted for both of these are that they have relied heavily on the AstraZeneca vaccine, which the main manufacturer of the AstraZeneca vaccine is located in India. And of course, the crisis in India has created a severe delay on the production of the AstraZeneca vaccine. It should also be noted that the COVAX program only takes aim to supply some 20% of the needs of the world. So it is not a whole solution.
Very well. I'll be coming back to you, Marcus, but let me quickly get onto the telephone lines where we've been joined by Honorable Kwabna Minta Akando. He's the MP for Draboso and also a ranking member on the Health Committee in Parliament. Good morning, Honorable. Can you hear me?
Good morning.
It's good to have you. I hope you're doing well.
I'm good.
Right. So, yes, we have this issue on our hands we're looking at. You have indicated that this obviously is not in the best interest of the country. What is the committee intending to do? Or perhaps if you could speak on behalf of the minority as well, what's the minority intending to do moving forward?
Thank you very much. Listening to the full story of the investigation, you realize that this was a well-planned rip-off because the Minister for Health appeared before the committee and then he was requesting us to approve money for the purchase of these vaccines. And he indicated that he was going to buy the vaccine at $10 per dose. And so at that time, we willingly approved the amount for the minister. And so upon hearing these stories, we think that the minister will have to come back to Parliament and explain, provide further and better particulars on what has become of public concern.
Very well.
As I speak to you now, my sister, walking through the street, if anybody asks me when the next phase of the vaccination is going to happen, I don't even know. I have no idea. We clearly told the minister to even come back to the committee to update us on whatever is happening as far as COVID is concerned. In fact, given their own plan, they should have vaccinated not less than 7 million people by now. You understand? The worst case scenario, they should have vaccinated not less than 1.5 million by 2nd of June. And as I speak to you now, we have not even vaccinated up to 1 million people. And the immediate situation here, my sister, is that there are people, more than 600 people who have taken the 600,000 people who have taken the AstraZeneca as their first shot. Now, we don't have the AstraZeneca in the system, which means that their immunity the immunity may run out. Their immunity may run out. And there's no study that suggests that you could even miss the vaccines. So these are the issues the minister and the government should be addressing their minds to, rather than thinking through how to dupe the country. It is rather unfortunate that, my sister, in an era of pandemic, government officials are thinking about how they can inflate figures in contract to,
very well, Honourable, let's interrogate this bit about the Minister of Health coming to Parliament to seek approval. You said the approval was sought in respect of the price $10 per dose, correct?
Yes, it was $10 per dose.
What was the quantity? What was the quantity approved?
The quantity, they told us they were going to purchase to vaccinate not less than 20 million people. So it was more than 40 million doses. But they took into consideration that some may even go waste. You understand? And the bit of it that even beats my imagination is that if you listen to the names that are involved in this transaction, you realize that they are all foreign names.
But that's a point I'm going to. At the point of approval, what was the level of due diligence that was done by Parliament? Because Parliament also has a responsibility to ensure that whatever is brought to Parliament before passage is deemed to be good. So what was that due diligence that was done? Because like you're saying, these names obviously ring a bell because of certain...
So the assumption was that after approving the sum of money for the ministry, whenever they are entering into an agreement with any international partner, they will then come back to Parliament for approval.
And did this agreement come to Parliament?
No.
Okay, so so for us to understand, you're saying that a price or a certain figure was approved, and then subsequently, the minister or the ministry was expected to bring agreement to Parliament for passage, and that didn't happen.
That didn't happen. And you see, let me also make this point. You see, this $19 per dose we are talking about, in fact, it is not going to cost, if this is anything to go by, this is an agreement between the company and Ghana government. Indeed, it is not going to cost the taxpayer $19 per dose. It is actually going to cost the taxpayer something more than $22 per dose. Because once it gets into the country, they have calculated the deployment between per dose around $3. So we are going to add this $3 per dose to the amount we are buying, the $19 per dose. So we are going to pay, it's going to cost the taxpayer something around $22 per dose.
Right. Now the argument, very well. Are you done?
Yeah, and let me also make this point. After reading the statement from the Ministry of Health, they indicated that they were finding it very difficult to get in touch with the manufacturers and then to do the government-to-government transaction. And I am exceedingly shocked that Kwame Nkrumah's Ghana cannot get the opportunity to deal with Russian government. I mean, who will believe this story? And the revelation is that, you know, if you read the press statement that was issued by Sputnik in Russia, they were talking about two vaccines. The Sputnik V is 2 jabs, and then the Sputnik Light as well is 1 jab. And so they are developing the Sputnik Light. And one of the countries they are considering to do their clinical trial is Ghana. So as I speak to you now, Sputnik is in Ghana. They've gone through FDA, they've gotten clearance, and they will start their clinical trial at any given time from now. So how is government telling us that they cannot find Sputnik in any part of the world to deal with Sputnik? Once Sputnik is going through our institutions and seeking for clearance to do clinical trials in this country. So it hasn't added. It hasn't.
Right. Now that we're being told that the middlemen in this instance have already breached their delivery obligations on a couple of occasions, and now they have up to July to deliver on supplies that have been ordered. And we're told that if that is also breached, then the agreement will be abrogated. At least government would consider abrogating that. What do you make of that?
I don't know if you recall, there was a point in time that we were told that a certain sheikh was donating Sputnik V to the Republic of Ghana. If you are in the media, I know you recall this story, and that the minister responsible for health met him at Kotoka International Airport and took delivery of these Sputnik V vaccines. This is what is turning out to be the first consignment that we are talking about now. Now, in short, from what we have seen, this agreement is unconstitutional and therefore null and void. You know, the AU is buying these same vaccines around 9.75 or 78 or so. So if you need anything at all, I thought that Ghana government would have even taken the cue from that particular transaction. And so, my sister, the whole thing is that, government was seeking to do their own thing, and they will always try and wait and create an emergency situation so that they will tell us that we are not in normal times. So if they decide to buy even one dose, $50 per day, so if you ask them any question, they say, we are not in normal times. For example, as I speak to you now, at the budget estimate, Ghana has spent about 19 billion Ghana cedis in the fight against COVID-19. The Ministry of Health, when they appeared before us, they were able to account for only 600 million Ghana cedis, not up to 1 billion. When the Minister for Health was further quizzed, he said that apart from what he has accounted for, he doesn't know anything about the remaining 18-point-something million. What it means is that they will always create this scenario. Another example, the Frontier one. You recall that in the beginning, they charged $150 at the Kotoka International Airport. And they said we were not in normal times, and they justified the amount. Now, when they were further pushed, they reduced the amount from $150 to $50. So why did they start with the $50 in the initial payment? And now you have no idea what the private company is, benefiting from the people of this country at the expense of the state. So, the whole situation must be transparent, and we will call for every transaction and every agreement from the ministry for them to furnish us with copies, and we invite the minister back to start with ab initio. We think that as for this transaction, it's bad. It is something that we should not entertain at all. Even the characters that are involved in this transaction, there are questionable characters involved. And as a state, as a government, every time you are entering into any negotiation, the key word is due diligence.
Exactly. So that's what we expect, government to do. But let's look at this very important issue. And I believe you alluded to that in your submission, which has to do with the fact that for the AstraZeneca vaccines, it's 2 doses. Those who took the first dose are expecting the second, and that has delayed. Obviously, that is a concern for many, that what happens to their immunity, is a compromise and all that. As the Parliamentary Health Committee, what have you asked of the ministry in respect of this to ensure that, the first doses that were administered are not rendered redundant or are not made useless?
Yes, I have had a discussion with my chairman, and the clerk is supposed to write to the minister to appear before the committee, and we'll put all these issues before the minister so that we will get clarification. Obviously, this is an emergency. It's an emergency situation, and if we are not very careful, all these 600,000 people are going to lose their immunity, and it will be a great loss to the state. It means that whatever money we have pumped into the 600,000 doses has gone waste.
Right.
That is what it means.
Right.
So we will, but we have already discussed, and the minister is supposed to appear. You see, there are some rules on the floor of the House. When you file a question to invite the minister to the floor of the House, you don't have the opportunity to ask more than 3 or more than 4 questions. And the question is not supposed to provoke debate. Do you understand? So when obviously the person is not telling the truth, it is very difficult to even debate the person on the floor of the House. But we believe that at the committee level and as a ranking member, we'll be able to interrogate the matter. And if possible, I think that the press can also cover this interrogation or this discussion with the minister.
Very well. I think we can end the conversation here for now. Honorable Kwabena Mensah Akando, we appreciate your time and your inputs. Mr. Honorable Kwabena Mensah Akando is the MP for Joboso and is also the ranking member on the Parliamentary Health Committee in Parliament. Marcus, we will take a quick break. When we come back, we go into other aspects of your investigative report, try to understand what exactly the WHO plans to do with countries that are at the back of the queue in terms of procurement of vaccines and all of that. Stay with us. This is a Key Point. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is a Key Point, and we're still looking at the issue about the purchase of COVID vaccine Sputnik V, which has been reported by a Norwegian newspaper, Verdesgang, to have been purchased at $19. And indeed, that has been confirmed as well by the Ministry of Health in a statement issued in response to media publications about the earlier alleged overpriced purchase. We're speaking to one of the authors of that investigative piece, Marcus Tobiasen, and he's on Zoom. I go back to you, Marcus. Yes, so just before I connected with the Honourable MP on the telephone, you were speaking to the available pathways to government, like other African countries, for instance, and you talked about the AU and of course there's COVAX. Yes, if you could carry on with that, please.
Yeah, so what I was saying was that countries like Ghana has relied heavily on solutions that have again then relied secondary again heavily on the AstraZeneca vaccines. And of course, there is the delay in AstraZeneca vaccines due to the problems in India. What I would also say now that there is a big shift towards where we see a lot of the more rich countries of the world have reached their thresholds for vaccination, that they see that they have started redistributing their vaccines, like pledging vaccines. We have the G7 summit going on as we speak, where a number of the the US, the European Union, but also the UK and France have started pledging vaccines to poorer or developing countries.
So you think that rush for engagements with middlemen like the Sheikh and his team would be reduced significantly? Is that the case?
Well, it's hard to answer, because even though we see those pledges now, it's hard to see the timeline on it. There are several factors contributing that these vaccines might not see actual deployment for some time yet. One thing is the legal framework here. So these countries, for example, take the US or the European Union, they have placed big orders with manufacturers. When they now seek to redistribute these vaccines, it becomes an issue of the legal framework with the contracts they've made with the manufacturers. How do you deal with issues like liability in terms of late deliveries or even side effects? So you have to transfer the legal obligations from the original buyer to what then would become the end recipient, which delays the process further. So, for example, the US made a pledge of, I think, 500 million vaccines, but it is only, I think, within the next 2 years. So we don't know whether or not it will be 2022 or even 2023 before all these vaccines see deployment.
Very well. Marcus, would like to say a big thank you to you for your time and for the work that was done, which put a lot of things out there for us to actually interrogate. We do appreciate that work. Marcus Tobiasen is a reporter with the Norwegian newspaper Verdes Gang that reported the transactions with middlemen, which led to purchases of the Sputnik V vaccine at high prices, $19 as compared to the manufacturer's price of $10. We say a big thank you to you and do have yourself a good weekend. But also thanks to the other panelists or guests we had, Honorable Kwabena Minta Akando, also Mr. Kwame Sapon Asiedu. And we'd like to say a big thank you to you, our viewers and our listeners out there. We do appreciate your time and spending your Saturday mornings with us. We'll be back here same time next week. Until then, stay safe and stay positive. Bye-bye.